Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and I'm very excited about this episode. This is going to be one of the best episodes, though it's ironic. Sometimes the best episodes I think I've done are the least listened to or least viewed. So who knows? I hope people watch this and are just as excited as I am. First of all, I think my voice is a little off. I've been a little under the weather, so I apologize for that. Bear with me for that, but I think it's not too bad. Uh, God worked it perfectly where I had 2 days of sickness in between my episodes, so that's kind of perfect. But today's episode is me interviewing the founder of Baritus Catholic, Chris Lewis. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Connor. I appreciate the invite and looking forward to talking about faith and art and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I mean, one of the I've always sort of wanted to know uh, illustrators. That's always been something that I've always wanted to talk to illustrators about, to see their work and that sort of thing, because I think art is extremely important. It's important for storytelling, which
Mhm.
plot lines. The main focus of the show is storytelling, and in of itself, art tells its own story. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And beyond that, really, our faith is a story, right? So it's like the greatest story ever. And when you can combine those two worlds, I mean, art really serves the purpose of telling the faith. And so that's just it's like icing on the cake. So for me, like, it's the best of both worlds. I mean, those are the two things like I'm most focused on, like my faith and my art, and so they go hand in hand. I mean, we have a great tradition in the Catholic Church of just really like promoting and sustaining the arts in Western civilization for 2,000 years now, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, so the greatest story told in one of the greatest formats,
Hmm.
with the most, some of the most beautiful art. You've got behind you, you got the logo for is that's the logo for Baritus Catholic, right?
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yep. Hmm.
And then you've got the labels for Trinity Brewing
Yep. Up this way. Yep.
uh, the other side. So, you know,
Shout out to Tridentine.
yeah. Trevor's great. I've had him on the show multiple times. So how long, or have you always been artistic?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember as early as some of my first memories of just like pulling out a pack of crayons and trying to find whatever I could around the house to draw on. I think I was drawing like Pac-Man or something like that, and I can remember doing that on napkins at like, I don't know, 4 years old or so. And it just continued from there. And over time, actually, very early in my youth, I got really into, to date myself a little bit, I used to use the dot matrix paper out of our printer. And, I could unravel it into like 3 pages long. And I would try and draw these like epic Old Testament battles, like David and Goliath and things like that. So yeah, I can remember. I remember doing that forever. My faith waned in my close to my teenage years, and I rejected sort of like the Protestant upbringing that I had. And so for a while there, I kind of went into comic books and stuff like that. But what was lost on me all those years was the great Catholic heritage of art. So like once I started getting into that and more in my adult years, um, I shifted kind of my focus and what I really wanted to portray and the style and the type of imagery I wanted to do. But the love of art was always there. It just changed and um, transformed over the years depending on where I was in life. But
Do you think it's hard these days for artistic people to sort of maintain the faith, especially in their youth?
um, I don't know. I feel like the art serves the faith and the faith serves the art. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand and they really promote each other. At least that's been my case. Now I have to say I haven't met too many like dedicated religious artists in at least in
Hmm.
real life. I've gotten the chance just through starting Baritus of meeting a lot of them online, and so I know they're out there, and I know that they're doing amazing work. Um, but yeah, I don't. I for me, I didn't even know this whole thing with Catholic art like was really out there.
Hmm.
In fact, it's sort of shows like um, how like inexperienced I was with like social media. I wasn't really around when I was younger, so when I eventually did start getting on it, I thought that I would be like one of the few doing Catholic art on social media, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, there are like a million Catholic artists out there, so we're out there. It's just it might be hard to like bump shoulders with us in your local parish, but I think that it's actually helped having social media because we're starting to kind of like build this collective you know group where we kind of all know each other and we help each other and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
Word from our affiliate, Bishop Sheen Rosaries. You've probably worn through the chain of your cheap plastic rosary. Other rosaries simply can't stand up to the wear and tear of everyday life. Bishop Sheen rosaries are made of solid metal beads and paracord to withstand any condition and are backed with a lifetime warranty. Upgrade your rosary to a Bishop Sheen rosary made to fit your lifestyle or buy one for a friend. Each rosary sold supplies 2 weeks of food for a school kid in Uganda. You use the exclusive link down below to help support our efforts here at Plotlines. The link will take you to sheenrosaries.com. Be sure to use the code Plotlines10.
I think it's, from my perspective, it's more just as art has moved into Hollywood and sort of centered in that area. I know not like specifically like the type of art you're doing
Oh
necessarily,
yeah.
but just art as like creative people
Yeah.
uh is so centered in that area, and that culture there is just so anti-Catholic
Mm-hmm.
that it would just be natural for people to kind of reject their faith when being drawn into the artistic world.
Yeah, it's not an environment that like promotes or like encourages religious art at all. But I think even that is changing. I've even talked to some people who are in Hollywood who are they produce films and things like that, and they're trying more and more to kind of slip in Catholicism into what they're doing. Some of them are even branching off and starting their own film studios to focus specifically on that. So I think things are changing. One of the things I noticed, I don't watch a lot of movies anymore. And if I do, I kind of like older stuff, but um,
Hmm.
it seems like from the little bit I do know, like the movies that really like catch on with people and become like explosive hits, they always have like some core element of the Christian faith like in the story. Like you just can't get away from it. It's like the human story is the Christian story, and like all of that is embodied in Christ. And I think that when people want to tell a good story that like engages people and is memorable, they just can't help but get away from some of those Christian seeds, right? So I see it even when those movies go off the rails, there's that kernel of it that's there. So the point being, I think people are longing for it. I don't think that Hollywood in particular really has the equipment to be able to do it though. Like they're not formed in their faith, or they might not be practicing their faith, and it's just not a part of their language. That was kind of a struggle for me as an illustrator for many years when I wasn't Catholic, and I kind of struggled to do something that was meaningful and impactful because what did I have to work with? There wasn't that grounding truth that just permeates all creation that's found in Christianity. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Uh, on Instagram, one of my favorite things to do is share your artwork. That's one of my favorite things. My favorite parts of Instagram is just whenever the saint, like whenever you have a saint that fits the day, it's just so beautiful. And to be able to share that and stuff like that on like my story and stuff like that. I mean, I don't have a big Instagram following, but it's just it's it feels like a productive use of Instagram, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
There's not a lot of productive uses for Instagram, at least that I can do at the moment. Um, but sharing artwork like that is just very, very beautiful and very awesome.
Yeah, it's excuse me, it's one of those things where with my business it's kind of like a necessary evil to be on social media, but I found that like when I was starting my business I was on there a lot more, and I just can't do it much anymore. Like I get on there and it's just like it's really kind of it's really kind of vapid, and in some senses it's kind of a cesspool. Like the lowest common bar is what's trying to like start get attention, and Instagram has like shifted to reels, and so like that focus on like traditional art is sort of disappearing. Now I'm seeing a lot more of like AI generated art, and it's unfortunate. I do what little I can by trying to create images that convey sort of the traditional beauty of the faith and that aesthetic. And it is a positive, I think, of being able to put beautiful things out there into the world and maybe counterbalance some of the other stuff. And I think that's kind of what Catholics, or at least I hope that's what Catholics have been, what they found, inspirational or important about my work, hopefully.
Yeah, no, tell me more about like your thoughts on AI created art.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it. I was just kind of digging into it the other day because I was seeing, so you're now starting to recognize, like, you see something and it has that look of AI. I'm starting to see more and more of it, and I don't really get it. I don't know what to say about it yet. My first inclination is I'm a little bit put off by it, just because it doesn't sound like, from what I know, it's really art. It's kind of just like you're just typing keywords, right, and then it generates something based on a collection of its stored images for reference. And I came across something interesting yesterday, where there's a large group of artists that are starting to put together lawsuits against this sort of thing, because AI doesn't just generate anything out of nothing. Like, it's pulling those things, as far as I understand, from a large body of work that's out there in the internet. So I don't know what I think about that. I'm obviously there can be things that are like interesting about it and engaging, but it doesn't have that, obviously it doesn't have that human core underneath of it. It's not really telling a story or connecting to the artist in any kind of way. So
Yeah, it's more accidental.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
what it seems like. Yeah, and I think people have always focused on like the hands look weird,
I
you
know
know.
they do. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and I had to say, there's like a creepiness in a way about a lot of the stuff I've seen. Like it just, I don't know, it feels off. But I need to
Yeah.
do some more digging on it and figure out what it is. I don't plan to get into it. I like doing traditional art myself. So
Before you came to your Catholic faith, you mentioned you did some comic book work and that sort of thing. So what kind of work did you do more detailed?
no, that was more when I was like a young kid. I was
Oh, okay.
I was kind of drawn to comic books because there wasn't really anything out there visually stimulating for me in that way, until I got to be like in my late teens, and I started to discover some of the classic literature of like the 19th century and early 20th century, and those works that were illustrated by people like Gustave Doré and Arthur Rackham, and that started to take the place of sort of the comic book stuff, superhero stuff. I never really liked the superhero stuff. I was just kind of what I had in front of me, and so that's where I kind of like learned to draw. But once I started getting into more of those traditional illustrated illustrators, that really started to catch my imagination and my attention, and so I focused a lot on following and taking after some of those artists, in my late teens to early 20s. But I didn't know what to do with my talents. So like I barely got through high school. I was kind of all over the place, and didn't really know what to do with myself. And there wasn't really an outlet to be successful with art, like out on your own in those times.
Yeah.
Social media wouldn't come around for like another 5 to 10 years. And so I basically went back to art school and studied graphic design. So I went into graphic design at the corporate level in marketing for like 17 years. And I always did freelance on the side. So I was doing a lot of work for bands and that sort of thing. And it was very secular. It wasn't always very Christian, at least like the culture around it. And so that kind of started to be at odds with me when I did finally convert. Yeah.
Yeah. So what sort of inspires you most, especially in the faith?
Just the history, like the reality of it. It was one of the big things that converted me um, back to the idea that I could trust Christianity again, because I really lost my trust in Christianity through the Protestant lens that I saw it through when I was younger. And Catholicism answered all of those questions I had. You know, finding out about the historical church and how it developed, how it was founded on St. Peter, how it grew, how it built, how the authority was there, how sacred tradition was passed on. Those things really informed me in my faith and inspired me to be a part of it and to depict some of these things. So that was a large part of it. I did always have an interest in the Old Testament, and like the Old Testament is just like the most epic book ever. I mean, it's got everything you could possibly want. You know, the origins of man, epic battles, struggle of man, all that, all the angels. So that's always been kind of a point of fascination for me. As I said, when I was younger, I used to do that, but I did fall away from that for many years. So it's kind of refreshing now, this late stage in my life, to actually rediscover this again through a Catholic lens, because I see it in a whole different way than I used to, and it's just something that I love to create and share.
I came across a story about Emperor Henry, Saint Henry. Uh, he was a Holy Roman Emperor. He once he stayed at like churches overnight. I think it was the first time went into a city. He stayed over. Yeah, it's like I don't know what you call it when you like basically staying over with the Blessed Sacrament and stuff like that.
Mm.
Um,
Like
but
adoration.
yeah, adoration, but like a whole night. I think it has
Yeah.
a. I think there's a specific name,
Okay.
but it's not coming to me. Uh, and he saw Jesus celebrate a high mass um, uh, in this church that he stayed over, and he had like two deacons, two saints that were deacons, like assisting him. And
Wow.
I just thought that was one of the most beautiful things. Like that's something that I would love to see depicted in art, like events. Like
Hmm.
do you see yourself doing something like that, or like depicting events in a more like a lot of at least what you do, at least what I see on social media is sort of this focused on sort of an individual saint
Hmm.
and their like kind of their iconography, I guess, if that's
Yeah.
the right term, uh without sort of the whole scene uh presented.
Hmm. Yeah. I love that, by the way. I haven't heard that story, but it's interesting. I was reading up on Joan of Arc the other day, and she kind of has a similar story of seeing visions of saints, I believe, when she was in adoration herself. So there's something to that. That's interesting. Yeah, those little anecdotes from Catholic history that's been one of the projects kind of in the back burner,
Hmm.
or at least in the back of my mind, is getting to a point, and I've already started sketching out a few of them that I had in mind, Joan of Arc being one of them, that are more of like depictions of scenes that come from Catholic history. So that's definitely something I want to do. I don't typically, so a lot of the saint stuff I do is just kind of like, oh, I'm inspired to do this saint, and I'll do it in between like some client work or something.
Hmm.
Um, I have been doing more scenes like for some clients, like I just did quite a handful of full depictions for Ascension Press, and so hopefully I can release those pretty soon. And it really depends on what strikes me with inspiration. I don't want to say too much about it yet, but I do have a couple of personal books in the works that are going to be more like scene related, to hopefully evoke a visual meditative sort of illustration that can go with some of the stories of the Bible and things like that. So that's in the works. I do it from time to time. One of the first things I did was that Glory of the Mass scene, and that's become like one of the biggest sellers for me, or like what people love the most. So there's definitely a demand for it out there, and more the problem for me is time.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'm doing things for clients, and I'm on their timetables, and there's not a lot of spare time. But I would be doing more of that stuff with my spare time for sure.
Yeah. Well, so what is your client work, or sorry, I guess what has your experience been with clients uh regarding like books and art and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's well, I never really intended to start a business. That's kind of one of the funny things. I was just doing it for fun, and then there was demand there for some of the things I was making. So I had clients reaching out to me and just say, "Hey, are you accepting commissions? I saw some of this work on social media." And at the time, I was working full time in marketing, and I was like, "Well, I'll take a job here or there," and that turned into like enough to support me, and that's why I eventually left the corporate world to do this full time. So the client work is essential to really maintaining the business, but also the products I make that are just based off my personal illustrations, those are really grown too. So now it's like a 50-50 type
Hmm.
thing, and I'm actually backing off of a lot of the commission work so I can focus on more personal stuff these days. But no, I love the client work. I've worked with Philip Campbell, who's an author. He has his own publishing company, but he's also been published on Tan with the Story of Civilization, that
Yeah,
whole
he's a
series. And
historian.
yeah, historian, and I've loved working with him. He's got some great works out there. So I've done some history work for him, and then some of his fiction work. I've done covers. Ascension Press, I have a lot of um, experience working with them. Last year with the Bible Timeline series they did. We're also doing some more of that this year. So there's those are some of the types of projects I work on: book covers and inserts for workbooks and textbooks and things like that. But a lot of logo design, which um, everybody needs a logo, so it's one of those things that I end up doing, but it's not really illustrative, so I didn't intend to really do as many of those, and so I am kind of slowing that stuff down a little bit now, so I can do some more of the stuff that you were talking about previously, which is what I really love to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So like how has the sort of the process looked like when you do commission? Like how are like is it hard to usually create what people are looking for? Like do people usually know what they like want specifically? Like how do you manage like cuz their idea in their head versus
Hmm.
what you're creating and what you're able to create and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it really depends on who the client is. I mean, some clients have everything like really well thought out, and they're like down to every detail. Like, I want you to do this, this, and this, and those are easy because I don't have to sit there. We don't have to do a back and forth of a creative session, creative concepts and that sort of thing. It's usually just like I'm making their vision come to life. But there's other clients that are like, I know I kind of want this general thing, run free, blank slate. And in those types of situations, I'll usually do several concepts, and then pitch that, and then through a process of going back and forth, just reworking it and refining it until it's like, okay, that's what they're aiming for. But the most difficult ones are the ones that really don't have any visual connotation to them. Like they're more nebulous. I'm trying to think of one. A lot of the logo jobs are kind of like that, where there's not like, and that's where you really get into like creative exploration and really trying to be creative. Um, like for example, Harrison Butker came to me several years ago to design a logo for his. He's the Catholic kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs,
Yeah.
and he had his personal charity he needed a logo for, and Harrison Butker, like it wasn't going to be something football related. So like, how do you make something that's like tells his brand? And
Mhm.
so it was very interesting. I went through a lot of just creative concepting and things for a few weeks. And eventually, this idea of, he wanted something kind of like vaguely religious in it. So this idea of like 3 sevens came to mind. So it built his whole logo out of sevens. And but so it had the cross as the center. It spelled out an HB, and it had his number 7, and that was how the
Mhm.
whole logo was built. So I mean, there wasn't anything there. Like it took a little bit of like creative brainstorming to come up with something like that. But when it comes to clients who just want an illustration, I mean, those are much more straightforward because it's like, I want Saint Isidore, and so I draw Saint Isidore, and I've actually stopped doing a lot of the saint stuff because um, I'll have multiple people come up to me and be like, "Hey, can you do me Stella Maris or something?" And it's like you can only draw Stella Maris so many times. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a long list of saints, right?
yeah, there are, but it's for the most part, people typically want like the same ones.
Oh,
And when it gets to like logo, like for example, I've probably done just personally, I've probably done 3 iterations of the Sacred Heart, and then I've had
mm.
4 people come to me to do Sacred Heart logos for their parish or for their
Oh,
schools and
okay.
things. So then it gets a little challenging. It's like, well, how many times can you do a Sacred Heart, and have it be something that is used in a logo? So that's kind of where creatives make their money in trying to do something unique.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Have you done any sort of fiction art?
Um, I did like a homage. This kind of like a throwback to my young years when I was into comic books. I did a homage to Finian, the series that's put out by Voyage Comics, and I also did their branding for them. So we kind of
Mm.
had a relationship there, and I saw that they had this Finian series, and I thought it was pretty cool. So I'm like, well, I'd love to do like, one of my favorite things like back in the comic book days is like when your favorite artist would like jump over to some other title and like do their version of it. So I was
Hmm.
like, yeah, I'll do something like that for Finian. So I did a poster for Finian, which, but it's rare. I'm trying to think. And I've done some stuff for Philip Campbell for his fiction series, but
What's his
not.
fiction series?
He just released the second one, which is, I hope I could say this name right, Palladologies. And the first one was the Tale of Menaeth. I don't know how to say that exactly, but so the Tale of Menaeth and Palladologies is this two books of this series, and I did the covers for that.
Okay.
Um, yeah, my daughter's like a big Lord of the Rings fan. She keeps telling me to do a homage to Lord of the Rings, and that's kind of tempting me. So I might try my hand at that
I
one of these
second
days.
her motion.
Yeah, I need
Uh,
to know. I've watched the movies. I couldn't get through the books, so like I can only
uh,
read nonfiction. I cannot. Fiction's like an uphill struggle for me. So I need to
which
learn the stories a little bit better.
that's kind of odd though, given that like you do art, like
I
that.
know I'm a contradiction. I don't even understand me. I don't know. Well, history. Sometimes history is like more fascinating than fiction, and that's what gets me. Like when I read some like great historical works, and I'm just like, this is like a movie. Like, how did this happen? So there's that part of it too, that where the history can be pretty epic, and
Well, but even history has to be told in a specific way
it's true.
that ha-
Yeah,
that is
engaging.
in a sense they have to become fiction writers. Historians have to become some like they have to stylize how
Hmm.
they write something,
It's true.
even if they're telling you exactly what happened.
Yeah, that's true. And some of like Winston Groom is one of my favorite writers. He wrote favorite writers for historical books. He did a lot of Civil War and World War
Mhm.
One type stuff, but he wrote Forrest Gump too. So he took that sort of creative spin from Forrest Gump, and it comes out, and his books read like movies. So
Yeah. So we discussed earlier Trinity Brewing. How
mm.
did you get connected with Trinity Brewing?
Oh, I love beer. That's the first thing, and I love the Catholic faith. And so when I saw there was a Catholic brewery, I was like, this is like right up my alley. I don't remember if I reached out to Trevor and just kind of connected with him and said, "Hey, that's pretty cool that you have this thing going," or if he reached out to me. I don't remember how it worked, but I mean, we're on the same like trajectory as far as our thinking on the creative aspect of the labels for Trinity Brewing. Full credit to his brother who actually does the label design, but they do use my illustrations in those, and that's what the taco signs back there are of. Um, yeah, it was one of those things where like it just worked really well. I actually, when I was in art school, I kind of like made up a beer brand and did some like fake beer packaging and branding and marketing as one of my projects. So
Fake.
yeah. Well,
That's
I'm
so
not.
funny.
If I could have brewed some beer to go with it, I would have. But
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. So the Mass of the Ages one, it is yours. You did the art.
yeah, and that art came from they actually came to me when they were releasing their first of the three videos to do the website illustration. They wanted this grand image of the high mass and that experience of like what it's like to enter into this world of the I'm sorry, I said high mass, high altar, to enter into this sacred space. And so that was really the direction for that. And so I created this image of this family walking in, and just this epic scale of the high altars. And they ended up doing a collaboration with Trinity to do a Belgian whip beer, I think, if I
Hmm.
remember right. It's up here, but
Yeah, I think it's a
too
wit
far to
beer.
see. Yeah, and so that worked really well for that label, and so they went ahead and did that collaboration and used that image for that.
Yeah, I was wondering what came first, you know, the beer, the image,
Yeah,
like that type of thing, like, or who. So, Mass of the Ages commissioned you to make the art first.
that's correct. Yeah, yeah, I
Okay,
did that. Actually, that was like one of my first projects right out of leaving my career.
really?
Yeah, in
Wait,
fact,
when did you leave your career?
uh, I'm going into the third year now, so like
Oh,
2020.
okay.
Yeah, 2020, and they hit me up like right when I was debating doing this full time, and so that helped kind of like get me started. So yeah, I did that about 2 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So I didn't realize how like new, how like recent you started this and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't intending to start a business. It kind of blew up. Um, it kind of blew up on its own just a year or two before I decided to do it full time. So I mean, I've been working with Baritus, working on this company since like 2018.
Okay.
The idea was there kind of since 2017, but I couldn't quite figure out what I was going to do, and I was still struggling a bit on like what am I going to do. I've told a story before on another podcast. Like I put art aside for like 15 years, like hand drawn art illustration type work, because I was so busy with graphic design, and I'd come home from that full job, and then my family was my obligation there, and that's where I spent my time at night. So I wasn't drawing for years, and so when I got back into it, I was kind of rusty, and I was like, I can't even draw Jesus. Like, how am I going to do Catholic art? So it took me a while to kind of get
Okay.
back into it, and um, I had already started developing a style just in sketching for fun at work, or on some projects for work, but it took a little bit while for it all to come together the right way.
So did your art sort of drastically change between you taking a break from art and restarting?
There are some elements of it that are there in my old days. I would say, like, in those young years, like in my teenage years, it was definitely much more like comic sort of oriented. And then, as I said, as I discovered those like 19th century illustrators and engravers, and 18th century, that kind of like wood carved look and etched look and some of the classic illustrations from those books, that started to dominate what really like motivated me. And so I naturally kind of shifted towards combining all of these things that I was really into, and developing a unique style that I felt like was original. And that really just came from Frankensteining together a bunch of things that I was into. So yeah, it took a little while to develop that. I actually kind of developed the whole look working on a private label product for the company I was working for. They were releasing a line of wines, and I started doing the illustrations for that, and it was like a 19th century theme, and I was like, well, I'll do this engraved sort of look for that, and I did it. And I'm like, oh, I love this. This is like right up my alley. And then it just seemed to work so well for Catholic art, and so I just transitioned from more of that secular focus to Catholic art, but using some of that experience and some of the style that I developed over all those years.
Is there a specific name for the kind of art that you do, or is it complete sort of where would it sort of fall into? Do you think into
Yeah,
category?
people, I get that question so much, and I think even for me, like I never really thought about like what kind of art I'm doing. I just do what comes naturally or
Sure.
comes to me. But so people, it's funny, people will kind of get hung up. They're like, it's modern, but it's not like modern in that way. It's still traditional. So I mean, and I think that's accurate. It's modern because it's digital. So I'm using modern tools. I'm not doing this, with pieces of etching wood or doing it on paper with pen. I am doing it through a digital tablet, and but the concepts and the themes and the style that I'm reflecting are all based on traditional aesthetics. And I'm not really trying to reinvent that. Like I want people to look at my art and say, oh, that's definitely Catholic art.
Hmm.
And I've never wanted to do like modern art or like try to make Catholicism look modern or like contemporary. Like I'm really drawn to to the past and to the history of our faith. And so that's I try to make that come out in the things that I work on.
You're making modern art look traditional. You're
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
modern traditional art. That's kind of interesting. Instead of making what you're making, what like the sort of type of art, instead of making that modern, you're making the art, or
Yeah.
you're making the image traditional, but using a modern
A modern
take.
medium. Yeah.
Yeah, modern medium,
Yeah.
which is great. Yeah. So what does your art look like when it is done, like on pen and paper and that type of thing?
Well,
Do you still do that ever?
no, I don't. I mean, I
Oh, okay.
sometimes I'll do my sketch. I'll do my sketch phase by hand. Sometimes, I might just have a pad of paper, and I always sketch with a colored pencil. um, so I'll do that sometimes, and then take it into the computer and digitize it, and turn it, do a digital version of it. But yeah, those days of sitting down and doing it by hand are pretty much long gone. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Like I'm getting old, so it's not as easy for me to sit there with for hours on end with pen and paper. And I'm also very particular about like things being perfect. And a lot of times, I remember days where I'd spend like 10 hours on a piece by hand, and then I get to the end and I'm like do something and mess it up. And they would just kill me. I'm like, okay, so then I have to go back and fix it. And like I just with digital, I can mess up a million times, and I just keep moving. It doesn't ruin the piece and doesn't create a lot of like back recovery work that I have to do to fix it. So yeah, it's for me. It's just that process is a lot more streamlined and a little bit easier for me to go from concept to sketch to final, all in the digital way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I wanted to bring everyone to your website because I want to shine a light for people who don't know your work. So here is your website. Uh, just it's amazingly beautiful. Just it makes sense because your it's your art, and your art is incredibly beautiful. But this is just absolutely amazing. Uh, it's like no other website I feel like I've ever seen stylized. Just especially like how the image moves. I don't know if that's a common thing, but I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. I'm definitely not a web guy. I thought I try to keep things pretty simple and make it, focused on the graphic
that's true.
aspect. Yeah.
It's very simple. It's just very beautiful
Yeah.
and
Thank you.
very well done. It's interesting. The Baritus. I've only seen the second definition of Baritus in Latin.
Mm.
I didn't know it also meant trumpeting,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
is
And I think
really cool.
and I think that I don't know exactly the etymology, but I think it has to do with the fact that the war cry sounded like trumpeting. Like,
Oh, okay.
and I think that the people that heard it thought it sounded like a trumpeting elephant. So I can't imagine what that war cry sounded like. It must have been very interesting. Um, but for me, it kind of combined the two worlds of like the war. So that's the sword aspect of my logo with the trumpet, which is it reminds me of like the Old Testament. So like when Jericho falls, the soldiers are blowing the trumpets around Jericho for those days on end, and so that symbolism is there, and it also kind of takes on the meaning of proclaiming the faith. That's the trumpet. Defending the faith, the sword. So all these meanings are tied up in that word, and yeah, and I learned recently that actually baritone
Oh,
comes from Baritus. So
yeah,
that's
that
the
makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, so it was probably the word is actually more definitely more affiliated with trumpeting than at
Yeah,
least word wise than war cry in maybe the sense that we might think of like voice wise.
yeah, it's possible. Yeah, I initially when I came across the word, I only knew about the war cry version because it was described in a book I was reading about the fall of Rome, and some of the invaders were using the Baritus, the war cry. It was only later I learned about the trumpeting aspect of it, but it worked very well symbolically as far as just what the brand's all about.
Yeah. I love your frequently asked questions.
Yeah,
I,
and a disclaimer about that. Like I feel so bad. I get so many emails, and thank you for all those people that reach out. It's been impossible um, to get back to everybody, and I hate leaving messages. I try to read everything, but it's not always possible to write back. So I hope that some of this will address those things. But yeah, I've had to prioritize client and shop communications. So
yeah, no. I just think I don't know why, but I find the answers amusing. Uh, uh, Anyways, so that's that, and then uh, people can find your work on Etsy, which I will have links, and I'll have links to these websites so people can find your work. Let me pull up the Etsy. So this is just examples of your work. It's just really beautiful stuff. Um,
yeah, and I've got some of those products I make myself. These posters, just because of the amount of space they take, I print those on custom on demand. So if you place an order for like a poster or a phone case, because of all the different models that are out there, those do print custom. But all the other things are products that I develop myself. I work with printers to get those made. So whether it's holy cards or prints or T-shirts, like I have all that stuff. Hopefully, a little bit of something there for every aspect of your Catholic life, and a way, like a simple way to like evangelize or just like start conversations, especially the T-shirts. Like I have so many people reach out to me about people coming up to them about the T-shirt they're wearing, and like that's what it's all about. Taking up some visual space in the culture.
hmm Yeah, I know Rob from Avoiding Babylon loves your t-shirts. So it is I think he wears them a decent amount of times on his channel. So it's also it's good advertising, right?
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, I saw him wearing one while he met Matt Fradd, so I was honored.
Well, I mean, you working with a lot of what is it a lot of publishing houses, that probably gets the sort of the information, or about your work out to a lot of people, right? Or is that not the case?
Yeah, a lot of people have reached out and they've said, "Oh, I recognized your work here on." So I don't know if it's when I started working for publishers, my company wasn't that well established. So I think now it's kind of growing, and people will buy some of these things and give them out as gifts and things, and so more and more people are becoming familiar with the brand, um, and so that's helping. So now when people see my work, like in an Ascension Press publication, they'll be like, "Oh, I recognized your image over here," which is that's awesome. That's nice. Um, I do this stuff because I love it, and I'm just like so grateful to God and to all the people that support me, because they help me continue to do it, and it's just like more than I could have asked for, to be able to finally get to a point in my life where I can be doing something that I really love doing, and to have it be regarding something that means as much as the faith. So
Yeah, the St. George one looks very like Roman. There's a lot of different types of takes you can make with um sort of St. George.
mhm.
A lot of them are medieval looks,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And this one's a lot more Roman, right?
Yeah, it's interesting too, because the tradition of St. George goes back to Roman times. The
Yeah.
first sort of iteration or tradition passed on came from St. George being a Roman soldier. So it only later, like hundreds of years later, it got picked up and um, proliferated in England. But so it's interesting that it typically takes on the medieval English sort of look. But I always kind of like the Roman look. I did the same thing with St. Michael. I think my St. Michael's a little more Roman looking. But even the armor and all that stuff, like it's all made up. It's not really from here or there, and it's partly for that reason, because the traditions span so many different cultures and eras, and um, yeah,
Yeah, and it allows a lot of creativity
yeah,
to go into it,
exactly.
because I imagine saint people have seen saints over the course of centuries.
Hmm.
Depending on how long they've been saints, but I imagine that they look different depending on who sees them.
Hmm.
Because I can't imagine. I imagine that each saint appears to whoever they're appearing to in sort of uh, a way that they'd understand.
Hmm. Yeah, you see that with Mary, right? In some of the
Mhm.
apparitions, like she appears to like Our Lady of Guadalupe. You know, she appears like um, one of them, and yeah, I've heard that story with the Marian apparitions, and it's also kind of funny. Like I'll do saints in a certain way, and some people are very particular about how they envision a saint, and they'll be like, oh, like Joan of Arc. I had someone say, like she's not beautiful, like beautiful enough, and the reason for that was because I didn't want the focus to be on the beautiful aspect. I wanted it to be on her rigor and on her determination and on her strength. And so that was what, whatever that is I'm trying to focus on in a particular illustration, that's kind of what gears me towards how I'm going to depict that particular saint. Saint Peter here, he's not, he's looking kind of like sorrowful and like downcast because it's all tied up into this commission he's been given and where it will take him, and what's at stake here that the Lord has commissioned them to. So he's not the Saint Peter that you sometimes see on like those 19th century holy cards where he's like blushing in the cheeks and
Mhm.
all happy. This is a Saint Peter who's ready to go take on the world.
What's the most popular type, like sort of format, like poster, sticker, that sort of thing? What's the most popular there? And then what's the most popular image that you've sold?
Well, they kind of go hand in hand. So the most popular uh, product that I sell would definitely be the virtues poster. So I did a poster depicting the 7 capital virtues, and instead of just like outlining what the virtues were, I picked a saint that kind of represented that virtue, and depicted them actually fighting a demon who represented the vice. And so it's basically like Mary and the saints just slaying demons
Where is
through.
that one?
If you go to posters,
Oh, posters.
yeah, right there, second one down on the left. That's my biggest seller, and I've taken like the Saint Therese part of that out and the Saint Benedict part of that because those really resonated with people, and I made those into T-shirts, which and stickers, which those do really well. Um, but it really depends. Like I see some things move in sticker form that you know maybe don't sell as many prints of, and I guess it just depends on what the design is. But this is by far probably one of my more popular designs.
Wow, yeah, that's
And
beautiful.
and it's all based around that quote from Job, which I love that. So I have a sticker, for example, of that quote as well.
That's great. Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. Just let people allow sort of experience that. It looks really great.
Yeah, thank you. There are, I don't know what it is right now because the Christmas season kind of emptied things out, but normally we have over 150 items in the shop. I try to keep a lot of stuff in there just because the Catholic world's so vast and different people are looking for different things. So I try to have something for everybody. So yeah, you can check it out and have fun exploring it.
Yeah. So, what do you see in your future, though? Like, sort of, how do you see this your company moving forward?
One of the biggest focuses that for me that I'm really intent on doing, hopefully this year, is to do more self-publishing of books. So I have some book ideas in mind that are going to take quite a lot of work. So it's just a matter of carving out. And this is one of the reasons I'm kind of slowing down the commissions a bit for clients.
So,
Um,
book of art.
they will be, well, I have various ideas in mind, but they will be books of art, more for meditation, like that sort of thing, on some various topics in the Catholic spectrum of our religious life. And so scripture, some of the prayer devotions, like some of that, to put those things in book format, has been a goal of mine for a number of years, and so that's going to be a big one. I want to shift to more of those like collectible sort of things. Um, yeah, I the t-shirts have been that's something I kind of always wanted to do for years, and so that's been kind of fun, just releasing new t-shirts. I have a St. Patrick design coming out
Oh,
next week, so people can pick that up before St. Patrick's Day. So I'm planning to do a lot more t-shirts, and hopefully get that time to start working on some book ideas.
by the end of this, you're gonna have a T-shirt for every feast.
Yeah, yeah,
If
that's right.
someone could just wear your 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 clothes,
Yeah.
your cloth designs every day, pretty much, except for farias.
Hey, that'd be awesome.
That, yeah,
Put on a suit jacket for mass.
yeah. So how rewarding has your work been? Like where do you find value? Like what motivates you?
I have to say it's well, there's two aspects of it. The one I didn't expect, and that was, well, I didn't expect either, but I really didn't expect it really to become a family business. So my wife and daughter, my teenage daughter, help out every night. They're the ones sitting here, packing everybody's orders and shipping things out. And so that's been like pretty amazing to see my daughter like step up and like learn how to run the business and that aspect of it. And even my little ones, like I've got 5 kids, they all have like some part to play. Like even my little ones will come in here and start like putting hang tags together for t-shirts and stuff. And so that's been cool. We did our first like live event. We went to the Eucharistic Congress here in Atlanta last summer, and that was like such a fun experience to like build a set, take my set out. My son helped me build it there on at the event, and to have people be able to come up like and physically like shop my products and be able to talk to them and interact with them and my kids to step up and like kind of help run the business and run the table. Like that's been a blessing. And then the second part is just hearing from people and the impact that art can have in this world. I think like you go to Twitter and like people are just like arguing nonstop, like just hammering each other over the head with like their ideas and their arguments. And it's like, does it? I mean, it might change somebody out there, but I think for the most part, like it does more damage in a certain way than it does good. Well, one of the benefits of art is you can't argue with art. Like if you look at something that's beautiful and it touches your heart or it speaks to you in some way, like you're not going to sit there arguing with it. It's either true or it's not. It's either going to affect you or it's not.
Yeah.
And to see that art has that power, and to see so many people who aren't even Catholic who've reached out to me and been like, look, this has made me more interested in discovering the Catholic faith and learning about the Catholic faith, or people who are converting and that art has in some way been an encouragement or like helped them in that. Like that's awesome. Like I never would have. I literally thought I was just working on some illustrations and then putting them out on social media, and maybe like a few people would be like, hey, that's pretty cool, good job, to give me some inspiration, some motivation to keep drawing. And what it's turned into, now looking back, I can just say it's been a blessing from God to see how it's all kind of fallen into place, and just to see the impact that something as simple as lines and color on a screen can have for people. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, art is very powerful. I mean, that's why it's important to have beautiful churches.
Exactly, exactly.
It's
And I can say I'm a testament to that, because when I was pretty anti-Christian by the time that I met my wife and I stepped into my first Catholic church, and I
Mm.
started going to mass with her every Sunday. And I was sitting there and I was like, okay, I mean, what is all this stuff about? But I sat in there every single Sunday and I would look up at the art that was up in the back of the church. And eventually over time, it really just started to impact me. And I started to look at all the Stations of the Cross and the windows and all this stuff. And it started to speak to me, and it started to make me have questions about what these things were, and to see the connection that we have, that it's not just some kind of like ethereal idea that we believe in. Like it's literally an incarnated history. And you see that most through art. I mean, that's one of the, during that whole iconoclasm debate, the people that won said, look, all creation has been redeemed by Christ. And now through that incarnate reality, our art speaks to that. And yeah, so the power of art is unbelievable. And I have no doubt that it played a part in my own conversion, just sitting in those churches for all those years.
Yeah, that's crazy. So it must have been a beautiful church that. Uh,
It was, yeah. I was in Florida in St. Augustine, their cathedral there, which is I don't know how old it is. Probably early 20th century, but they've they brought a lot of things over. It might even be older. No, it might be older than that. They brought a lot of like art from Europe over. They had like studios in Europe do a lot of the work that's in that church now. So it's pretty impressive. Really well done.
that's great. So I mean, it's got to be detrimental to have ugly churches.
Oh yeah, and I've had that experience too. I've had those soul-sucking, cold, sterile church experiences too, and it's rough. I mean, for me as somebody who's visual, that really well, and I'll say this too. Like right now, our church had like an explosion during COVID, and our tiny little FSSP parish couldn't hold the
A
crowd
good
that
explosion, right?
a good explosion. Yeah, yeah, it couldn't hold the crowd that came. So we've been in the gym ever since, and
Wow.
it's rough. It can be rough when
Yeah.
we're trying to put band-aids on it, but oh, it's been one of those. It's been like redemptive suffering for me in a little way, and for a lot of people at the parish. I think it's been hard, but
Wait, so are there two masses going on?
they'll do the daily masses in the actual church because there's smaller crowd, but on Sundays they just can't hold the
They
capacity is
do
too
the
much.
Okay, so they do the mass in the gym.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they
Okay.
converted it, so they built like an altar, a sanctuary, and they had an old altar that they put up in there. So there's two operating right now, but to hold the capacity that we need to for Sundays, they have to do it in the gym.
And they can't do two masses. I'm guessing not enough priests to do two masses at the same time.
I believe they're talking about it, but yeah, I don't know.
Because I'd assume that would make sense. I mean, obviously, it'd be a whole, who can get there first kind of thing.
Yeah,
Uh, that might
yeah.
create its own problems, but
Well, and not to down on our the circumstances because they are what they are. It's just it grew so quick there wasn't really a way to react to it in
sure.
the way that was needed. But on the other end of the spectrum, I've attended some parishes where they weren't in sitting in ugly buildings out of necessity. They were sitting in them for some other reason. It's like, come on, you could do better.
Yeah. Well, it's you know, uh, uh, I've heard people sort of respond to why put so much money into a beautiful church when it could be the money could be going to other places.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I would have people challenge me on that in the past. One of the interesting things, so one of the places where the beauty of the faith and the churches and the importance of building beautiful churches hit me on one of my trips to Rome, my first trip to Rome. When you step into the Vatican, like it's just overwhelming. And I've heard people make that argument. Why does the Vatican have all this wealth tied up in their church? They could sell all that and feed people. Well, I've heard the statistics on that they might feed people for a week, and then what? And then where are all the riches and the things that actually keep the speak to our soul and feed our soul for the rest of our lives? Like those things wouldn't be there, and that is the wealth that really belongs to everybody, right? So that wealth doesn't belong to the Vatican; it belongs to the world, and the world can go there and see it and encounter Catholicism visually in that way. It's a very I don't know. I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it's almost a very Gnostic thing. Like, oh, the material that stuff doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. I mean, we are body and spirit, and the things that we surround ourselves do matter, and it can matter on the opposite end too. You surround yourself with ugliness and things that are not beautiful, and it eventually that starts to have an effect on you. So they go hand in hand, right? Just another interesting tidbit about the Vatican stuff and some of the wealth in the churches. The Vatican doesn't even own most of that. Like there are private companies that own those things because it's so expensive to maintain them.
Mm,
So the Vatican actually has sold a lot of that to private Japanese companies and some other
that's kind of depressing.
private things. It is depressing, but on the other hand, those companies are going in and they're doing their restoration work and they're keeping it up, and so there's that. So some of that myth isn't even accurate. I guess was my
Hmm.
point there is that the Vatican doesn't have as much tied up in those treasures of the church as they think, and they're really for the benefit and the edification of all humanity. So
Yeah. My another argument I'd make is just that it's more important for society to put money in in uh in God's house
hmm
than it is to put money in the glorification of ourselves.
right.
So we need to have a culture that wants to glorify God more than the self.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to. Because if you push back on some of the people that make that argument and say, "Oh, if that's the thing that matters to you, feeding people," and it should. I mean, it's good, and there is a reality there that's good. We should care for those who need caring for. But I would say to them, do you have to drive the car you're driving? Do you have to have Netflix? Do you have to have the internet? I mean, you could sell those things off, and you would be saving money every month that you can put towards those things. So I mean,
True.
you can make an argument it's to them in their personal lives too, like what decisions are they making, um, because the thing is, a lot of that stuff that's in the Vatican too was worked for the church and given to the church freely,
Hmm.
right? So that's another aspect of it too, is those were things that belong to everybody. They're not just like, the Pope's. That's not the Pope's wealth
Yeah.
anyway.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's important to have beautiful churches,
Yeah.
and and it's really frustrating to see. I call them trash bag looking churches, where it's just basically like brown carpet all over the place, and I've even seen some with TVs, and it's just it's the most shocking and terrible thing to look at. Uh,
Yeah,
it,
there's a lot of brown churches out there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's unfortunate. I cannot. I just I'm grateful that I did not grow up in like the 60s and 70s and 80s, because it would have been just soul crushing to see people going into some of these churches and ripping out, things that are 100, 200 years old, in place of, felt banners and painting everything beige. I just don't get it. Or even when they started building the spaceship looking churches, and there's something to that too, that the order of the church has a purpose, right? So like after Trent, when they started to look at aesthetics and art again as a way to help catechize the faithful and to make the realities of the mass deeper, deep, more deeply experienced, everything had a purpose. Taking the root screens down and making that long walk up to the sanctuary and seeing the Eucharist front and center. It was all to symbolize us walking towards Christ and the life that we have in Christ. And so those like symbols get all thrown out of whack when you start like taking the tabernacle and putting it off to the side, and then stripping down all the art and the statues and taking the windows out, and just and setting up your church in a round space, and just some of the things that some of these churches have done is just like, I don't understand what they're trying to convey here other than confusion.
yeah. Your logo on top of that TV behind you
It
is
fell.
actually, I know, but it's great symbolism. Like TVs by itself are very ugly.
Yeah.
Uh, obviously they have a certain purpose, but you're covering it up with
Yeah.
beautiful art.
That one now is solely for the purpose of holding that banner up. We don't watch TV. We stopped watching TV years ago, and it was one of the best decisions. Like, oh no, almost 2 decades ago. It was like one of the best decisions I ever made. Um, but yeah, it's kind of there for necessity. We'll do educational. We homeschool all of our kids, so we'll do lessons and stuff like that on it. But yeah, I
Yeah.
prefer to cover it.
Part of my sort of podcast and stuff like that, sort of makes me deal with modern culture, because I want to bring in people who are attracted to modern culture and stuff
Mm,
like that into modern cinema and modern um modern TV shows and stuff like that. I want to point out to them where they're what the problems are, and in those series, and hopefully foster better art in those areas in the future. I mean, I think it's going to take a long time for that to happen. I think the fact that those kinds of art, the TV and movies, they're losing a lot of money because nobody likes them anymore. It's kind of becoming played out.
Yeah, I was just thinking that like they've stripped away all of the what's good and what's true out of storytelling, and now you're just left with like the vapid leftovers. And you watch some of the stuff and you just feel like empty inside. And that's something that Catholics should. I hate to be a curmudgeon and be like, TVs and movies are terrible, but there is an aspect that you are what you eat, you are what you consume, and that goes for the content you consume as well. And those people aren't doing that for you, Catholics. They're not like making this stuff for you. And a lot of times it's in contrary to what we should be holding as to be, important in our lives. Now, occasionally you get that amazing movie that still comes out that's like, okay, they did
Yeah.
something right here, and thanks be to God for that. But yeah, usually I have to go back several decades to find something.
Yeah, I'm very choosy with what I choose to watch, and the only things that I watch that are like, just to criticize or something like that, are, very much in line with my fiction tastes and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So like I've been criticizing and doing reviews on the Amazon version of Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. Like, because
Mm.
it's just a complete dumpster fire. But people need to know. People need to know why, and also it allows people to not have to watch it. If I tell people how terrible it is and what's going on in the show or whatever, they don't have to force themselves to watch it to know what's going on in
Yeah.
some ways.
Yeah.
So there are benefits to doing the show. I get to take on the burden of watching horrible entertainment for the greater good.
You are really sacrificing for the greater good.
I
That,
know. It's terrible, isn't it?
in
Um,
a lot of ways, you probably actually are. I can't sit through a lot of. I don't know when the last time I tried to watch a movie was. It's been a while, but I had a hard time sitting through them. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old.
I also just want to know what the problems are. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to figure out what should and shouldn't be a part of fiction and entertainment, so that then, if I have the opportunity to create a form of entertainment, or sort of criticize, either me creating or criticizing entertainment, so that people are if sort of forced in some ways to make things better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's good to, yeah, like you say, to know why something, what is wrong with something, and what are the problems with it. When I was a kid, I loved Star Wars. Um,
Hmm.
I don't. We did a number of years ago try to like watch one of the ones that came out subsequently, and it was just like I couldn't do it.
The
Like,
sequels, is that what
yeah, I don't even know now because I don't even know how many they've made. But
well, what
I
year was this when you
oh,
tried to rewatch or
it must have been like 8 years ago,
I'm trying to think
something
when.
like that. It was and the particular one doesn't matter. I don't know. Maybe the other ones have been good, but they too much of like this modern agenda that this it's almost like you're being lectured to. Like everything that comes out now, like they're trying to teach you some kind of like modern lesson about like some of the woke lessons, and it's just like everything's just forced in there to the point where it's like you feel like you're in an indoctrination session. And
Yeah.
yeah, movies are supposed to take you out of that, and they're supposed to take you into your creative imagination, not like bring you down with all the ills of the world.
Well, even morals, like if you look at a lot of fiction generally has some sort of moral, but it's instinctually you instinctually know that you're supposed to be doing that moral anyways.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
for these types of movies, you instantly feel like ugh, like you
Yeah.
are disgusted. You're immediately disgusted by what they're trying to tell you you're supposed to be doing.
Well, and they don't even try to tell you. Like it really, to me, it came across as more as like they lay everything out so explicitly, like you're an idiot. I don't know.
Yeah,
It could just be me. It's been a while since I've watched those, but I just felt like the Star Wars stuff kind of lost something.
well, it's
Um,
not that they necessarily think you're an idiot. It's they're idiots,
yeah, that well,
and they don't know how to
yeah,
tell people. They don't know how to talk to anybody but an idiot
yeah,
because
yeah,
they're used to talking to themselves.
yeah,
If you're
yeah,
an idiot and you're trying to explain something, I don't think you know how to explain something to a person on a greater level of understanding.
yeah. It's patronizing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's quite pathetic, and that's why there's been such a revolt against those types of movies, and they reviews. I don't know if you keep up with reviews and stuff like that, but reviews have just been tanking on those types of movies, and uh, p- uh, those types of studios have lost millions of dollars on movies that are supposed to be very very financially successful.
right.
And sometimes it's because of China, which is kind of funny. Sometimes so they're kind of playing a losing game, because if they make a good movie, China doesn't like it. Uh, well, depending on what kind of, if it's sort of surfacey good,
Yeah,
but doesn't have any underlying really really good underlying types of things, then it will work both. It kind of works both in America and the world. But if it's good, not just on the surface, but good on the underlying like messages,
hmm,
then it won't work in China, but it will probably work in the United States. But then if it doesn't work in both places, basically that's when it gets so woke that it doesn't even compute with like communist China and that type of thing. So
yeah,
that's why they like lose so much money. The only movies that make money these days are the middle of the road movies
yeah, yeah.
that have some good qualities or some like entertainment value. That's why like Top Gun Maverick made a lot of money.
I heard that. Yeah, and I heard them in from some friends who are I value their opinion. They said it was good. Um, I don't watch stuff really that's I don't know. So I'll never get bored watching like It's a Wonderful Life or Christmas Carol. I can watch those like forever. I don't know what these days though. Every time I've tried to watch a movie, I don't know if just people have a short attention span. It's like they just can't tell a story.
Yeah.
There's constantly got to be some kind of um, some extreme like visual candy just to like keep your dulled senses entertained. And
Yeah,
I
and
don't know, that doesn't work for me. That puts me to sleep at this age.
that's getting tiring for me too. Like I'm getting bored. Like there was a time when that was an exciting thing, but
Hmm.
I think there's a point where it just gets boring.
Yeah, it's and they've
Um
been doing this now for 20 years. With since 30 years probably with all the effects and stuff that they've been able to do. Um,
yeah, but I think just in the last 10 years it's gotten like overblown. Like
yeah,
there were it's definitely, I think, in the last 15, maybe 10 to 15 years it's gotten overblown, and that has really, I think, made everyone have a bad taste in their mouth when they watch it, because it's no longer about the story, it's no longer about the characters or the development in that, and it's not even really about sort of the beauty. It's really just about like overloading your senses.
right. Yeah, yeah. If you keep your eyes busy enough, you don't have to worry about thinking. You don't have to worry about the story.
But
That's what it
I'm bored
seems like. Yeah.
but I'm bored by that.
Oh, I
So
am too. I
yeah.
it's a certain kind of torture for me.
And people are getting bored by that. I think more and more people are. So hopefully things turn around and get better in that. And it's really great to have your art sort of in this drawing people back to physical art. Not not just what is it, like TV
Hmm.
and movies and stuff like that. I think a lot of people are coming back to books and art that you can kind of, you're not just looking at a screen for and that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
that
when you
that's
watch entertainment like that, you're consuming, like everything's being imposed on you, and you're just sitting there taking it in. One of the great things, and maybe this is why I started to gravitate towards illustrated books and things, is that it's just a static image, and you do all the work to analyze it and to understand it and to meditate and contemplate on what that's trying to tell you. So it's a flipped thing where you're doing the active work in that respect with artwork on a wall or in a book, and the movies and stuff, that's just like a fire hose coming at you, and you just sit there and take it in. So yeah, hopefully people still appreciate old school printed artwork.
yeah. Well, your art is challenging people to really think
Yeah.
more, and I think just so much in our culture is challenging people to think again.
Yeah.
The brain had been lulled into this pathetic sleep,
Yeah.
pathetic slumber, and now it's being reawakened, and people are really confused. They really don't know what's going on, and they're looking for answers. And art is a great way to attract people to to the truth.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
So,
yeah, so thank you for all the work that you do. It's, I mean, it's been an honor talking with you about this, and uh, it, I think there's a lot of artistic people in the Catholic world nowadays that maybe weren't around as much previously.
mhm.
Like I think art just kind of died in the Catholic world, maybe pre-Vatican II and post-Vatican II, kind of in that um, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s area. I mean, I could be wrong. At least it wasn't prominent
Yeah.
or spread around by the powers that be. Like the church wasn't pushing it, so we didn't get to see the art at church. The media and press was never pushing it, so we never got to see that. And then movies and TV shows haven't been pushing it either. So really, this sort of internet boom is the only way that we'd be able to see this kind of art come back.
Yeah, God willing, God willing. I mean, in the past, it would be the church that patronized the arts, and it really funded them, and that's gone away. Like we don't really have that anymore. But there's a silver lining there. I've had a lot of archdioceses reaches out to me about artwork, or parishes reach out to me, and so there is a will, or there's a desire there, and I think now the will's coming along with it, and people are like, no, we need a new sort of renaissance in a way. I don't know what that looks like, but I do get this feeling that people are ready for it, and so God willing, and hopefully I'm here to for a little while to come and continue to make the stuff that God has thankfully inspired me to make.
Yeah, let's pray that the church finds its footing back in the art world. Well, thank you all for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Join our Discord to continue the conversation off of YouTube. And please check out Baritus Catholic on Etsy and at their website. I will put links in the description for people to find that. So, anything last you want to say, Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Connor. It's been fun, and had a great chat. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for watching.
All right.
Have a great day.
God
Bye.
bless.